The Liege tragedy, the serial killer, and the blood exhibition. A terrifying scream shattered the misty morning in the suburbs of Liege. It burst out from the ground floor apartment at 17 Rue des Fraines, making housewives on their balconies jump in fright, while pigeons pecking at the roadside trash scattered wildly into the air. The scream came from Luc Moreau, veteran plumber, so tough that he once dragged out a 2-week dead rat from a drain without flinching. But this morning, Luc bolted from the apartment with panic in his eyes, his face pale as wax. Stammering into his phone, his voice broke. "Police, apartment 17. Under the floor, there's a body." Just minutes later, the quiet neighborhood was flooded with flashing blue and red lights. Police taped off the area as dozens of onlookers poured out, crowding the sidewalks with hushed speculation. In the small kitchen, where the scent of morning coffee and toast should have lingered, there was instead a horrible stench, the thick, choking odor of death, clinging in the air like poisonous fog. It hit the nose of anyone crossing the threshold, twisting their stomach. Beneath the freshly pried up tiles, flashlights swept over an unfinished concrete pit. And inside that pit lay a sight that made even the most seasoned investigators freeze. A human femur, still clinging with grey, rotting flesh, wrapped in a torn plastic bag stained with dried blood. Beside it lay a severed hand, the skin blackened, but with chipped red nail polish still clinging to the nails. The stench of decomposition, seeping from the cracks in the floor, swirled through the room. Forensic officers stepped back immediately, strapping on double masks and spraying neutralizer, but still could not drown out the odor that had seeped into every wooden beam and tile joint. Inspector Amélie Duhamel, a woman with a cold gaze and neatly tied hair, stepped into the scene. Her polished black shoes brushed against a smear of blood from the pit. Without a word, Amélie crouched and signaled the forensic team to keep digging. Each strike of the shovel against the cold concrete made the air heavier, fouler. And then, one by one, more body parts emerged. A broken arm, a headless torso, a torn patch of back skin marked with a crimson spider lily tattoo, and a clump of long matted hair. Everything was sealed in evidence bags, one by one, on the kitchen floor now, as cold as a makeshift morgue. At least one body, female, dismembered again, and buried beneath the kitchen floor. The forensic expert's voice cut through the tension, dry as a scalpel slicing a nerve. A young officer nearby gagged softly, his hands trembling too much to take notes. Out in the corridor, whispers spread like wildfire in the middle of the city. Right under someone's living room floor, there's a body, and the horror didn't end there. When the torso was turned over, the forensic team fell silent for several seconds. One whispered, "There's no head." Someone took the victim's head. The air in the kitchen froze. The yellow ceiling bulb flickered, as if it too trembled before the truth just revealed. Amélie stood silent for a few moments, her razor-sharp eyes sweeping the cramped room, where the old walls had become a shroud for a monstrous crime. She frowned slightly. A question weighed in her mind like a sentence. Who had lived for months in this apartment, right above the blood-seeping concrete, leaving nothing behind but deadly silence? And who was the one who decided to keep the head the victim's only means of identification? Rue des Fraines, small street in the suburbs of Liege, once nothing more than a place for working-class families, with old rental houses, yellow paint peeling from the walls, and wooden windows worn and rusted. By day it was familiar. Children cycling on the sidewalk, old women knitting on plastic chairs, the smell of toasted bread drowning out the odor of garbage on the curb. But this morning, the street had turned into a theater of horror, all eyes fixed on apartment 17 on the ground floor. That apartment had stood empty for nearly a year before it was purchased by Matthew, Bernard, a middle-aged merchant who planned to renovate it for rent. People called Matthew the landlord who got rich off real estate. Practical, quick, but rarely attentive to detail. So when he hired a plumber to redo the system, he never imagined he was prying open the lid of a hidden tomb beneath what he saw as just another investment. Before Matthew, apartment 17 had been rented by a man named Vincent Leclerc. Records showed he moved in around 2021, listed as a freelance online worker, living alone and keeping to himself. Neighbors vaguely remembered a tall, thin man in a baseball cap, shopping late at night and keeping his windows shut all day. In August 2022, he vanished without a word. No one asked questions because the rent was paid on time, right up to the last month. In the city's residency records, after the day Vincent left, there was nothing. No new address, no temporary residence, no registration. He had vanished from Liege's official map like a ghost. And now, beneath the kitchen floor of apartment 17, a headless, body dismembered, buried under concrete, less than a year old, had been found. All the pieces pointed, like an invisible hand, directly toward Vincent Leclerc. Inspector Amélie Duhamel, the woman leading the case, was no stranger to shocking crimes. At 38, she had over 15 years in the field, known for reading a crime scene like a book. Colleagues often said, she can look at a bloodstain and know when it fell. Amélie was born and raised in Liege. Her father, a district policeman, her mother, a teacher. Her father died young during an arrest, leaving her with a scar that never healed, the obsession with truths buried under silence. That was why Amélie never accepted easy answers. For her, justice was not a number in solved cases, but the act of dragging light into the darkest corners where crime hid. She arrived at the scene in a simple black suit, her hair neatly tied, her gaze cold as steel. One frown from Amélie was enough to silence a young officer. In Liege, people called her by a nickname, both feared and respected: the Ice Eye. Standing in the kitchen, thick with the stench of death, Amélie saw more than a body. She saw the traces of a meticulously prepared plan. Fresh, concrete lime powder sprinkled to mask the smell. The careful disappearance of the former tenant. Everything pointed to a killer who was not panicked but cold and calculating. Matthew Bernard, the new owner, was brought in for questioning that very afternoon. He trembled, sweat pouring down his forehead, unable to believe the apartment he had just bought held a corpse beneath the floor. I just thought of renovating it to rent out. Matthew stammered. I barely met Vincent. He only texted to pay rent, never called. When he left, I assumed he had just moved somewhere else. Amélie didn't answer, only took notes, her eyes fixed on Matthew's every expression. In her mind, the frame was forming. A female victim dismembered, a tenant vanished without a trace, and a kitchen turned into a tomb. By evening, the Liege sky was coated in lead and grey, drizzle falling on the yellow police tape in front of apartment 17. The curious crowd slowly dispersed, but an eerie silence still smothered the street. In Amelia's mind, a question lingered. If Vincent was truly the killer, where was Hind? How many more secrets still lay buried beneath the cold concrete? For 7 hours straight, the forensic team painstakingly retrieved every piece of the body. When the last remains were sealed in bags, no one dared call this just an ordinary murder anymore. The preliminary report was read aloud in the kitchen, now turned into a makeshift forensic lab. Female, approximately 30 to 40 years old, suffered cranial trauma before death. Body later dismembered with a sharp instrument. Estimated time of death, late July 2022. One detail caught. Amélie S.I., a large patch of backskin with a red spider lily tattoo. Though torn, the design was still clear enough to identify. Beside it, a gold necklace with a teardrop pendant, engraved faintly with the words, "Pour la vie" for life, was found caked with dried blood. Amélie knew this was the key. People could disappear, papers could be forged, but tattoos and keepsakes could never be forgotten. Police reviewed tattoo records in the area. Within days, a parlor reported. Last year, they had inked a red spider lily for a woman named Élise Garnier, born 1985, a waitress at a bar near Liege station. Records showed Élise was reported missing by her roommate in August 2022. At the time, police did not open a full investigation, as she had a history of depression and once ran away before. The case was classified as voluntary disappearance. Now everything was different. When asked to identify, Elise's roommate Safa burst into tears the moment she saw the necklace. It was her birthday gift from her mother. She never took it off. I told the police from the beginning. She didn't just leave. But no one believed me. Amélie kept her voice steady, but her eyes were cold as steel. Do you remember, in her last days, did Élise mention anyone special? Sophie wiped her tears, her voice breaking. Yes, she said she was seeing a man she met on a dating app. They had talked for weeks. He told her he wanted to open a cafe together, that he had money, a house. On the last night, she texted me, "Tonight I'm going to his place for the first time. Hope he's not like those other weirdos." That night was July 28th, 2022, and then she vanished. Amélie gripped her notebook tightly. The pieces were beginning to fit. Élise had met a man with his own place the very night she vanished. And where did that man live? In apartment 17 on Rue des Fraines. Police immediately re-examined security footage around the neighborhood. A clip from August 2022 appeared clearly. Vincent Leclerc, tall and thin, wearing a baseball cap, dragging a large suitcase out of the apartment near midnight. More chilling still was the streak leading from the kitchen door to the threshold, a smear of blood across the grey tiles. Administrative records confirmed. After that night, Vincent appeared in no files whatsoever. No change of address, no temporary registration, no phone signals. Amélie tapped her pen lightly on the table. He didn't disappear, he's just hiding. And every fugitive leaves traces. The victim's identity was now clear. Élise Garnier missing since late July last year. The prime suspect, Vincent Leclerc, the tenant of the crime scene apartment, vanished at the exact time. An international arrest warrant was issued. At the same time, police traced financial activity. Vincent's bank account showed a recent small transaction in Marseille, southern France. In the emergency meeting, Amélie concluded in a firm voice, "The victim is Élise. The sole and clearest suspect, Vincent Leclerc. He didn't just kill her, he dismembered her, buried her under the kitchen floor, and calmly lived 10 more days in the apartment. And don't forget, we still haven't found the head." The meeting room sank into a suffocating silence. Outside the window, Liege rain poured endlessly, echoing like the cries buried for a year. A message from the financial monitoring unit landed on Amélie's desk one grey rainy morning. A bank account under Vincent Leclerc had just withdrawn cash at an ATM in Marseille. The prey thought to have vanished for a year had revealed himself over a single small transaction. Amélie immediately ordered a task force to the south. They reviewed cameras around the ATM and spotted a tall, thin man with patchy beard, wearing a wool cap, wandering. He wasn't using his real ID under a false name, Julian Descato. Yet the build, the gaunt face, the vacant eyes was Vincent. 3 days later, he was arrested in a harbour tavern, drinking alone under a sickly yellow light. He didn't resist, only raised his head to glare at the officers, his eyes both proud and empty. Interrogation Room 3, Marseille, Police Headquarters. White neon light poured down on the metal table. Vincent sat across from Amélie, his hands cuffed, his face calm to the point of coldness. Vincent Leclerc, you are under arrest on suspicion of murder, dismemberment, and concealment of the body of Élise Garnier. Do you have anything to say? He shrugged, his voice hoarse. I don't know anyone named Lisa. I've never met her. Amélie didn't T-rush. She opened her laptop and played the footage. Vincent dragging a large suitcase, a trail of blood stretching from the kitchen door to the threshold. This is you, and this is the bloody suitcase. What do you say? Vincent squinted, startled for a moment, but he quickly regained his indifference. Just an old suitcase, a dead rat inside, blood leaking out. Amélie switched to the photo of the bloody necklace and the red spider lily tattoo. The victim is Élise Garnier. She disappeared while you lived in the apartment. This necklace was identified by her friend. This tattoo matches the records. Do you still deny it? Silence. 1 minute, 2 minutes. Then Vincent sighed softly. Fine, she did come to my place. But it was an accident. His voice suddenly turned disturbingly sweet, as if recounting something trivial. We drank wine. She mocked me, said my idea of opening a cafe was just a fantasy. She insulted me. I got angry. I grabbed her arm. She slipped, hit her head on the sink. Blood poured out. I panicked. Amélie clenched her pen tightly. Her voice stayed steady, but her eyes pierced like daggers. So, in your panic, you dismembered the victim and buried her under the kitchen floor. Vincent looked up, the corner of his mouth curling into a dry smile. I used to work in a slaughterhouse. To me, handling human flesh is no different from pork. The words fell into the air like a hammer blow. The whole room sank into silence. Only the recorder clicked steadily, capturing every chilling word. Amélie leaned back in her chair, staring straight at the man before her. He didn't scream, didn't beg, didn't shed a single tear. Only the cold composure of someone who treated death as an experiment. The twist of the case was clear. Vincent had never vanished from the map. He was still living in the heart of France under a false name, drinking in a harbour bar as if nothing had ever happened. He hadn't fled out of fear. He had only changed masks, and when that mask fell, the world saw the truth. The man once thought of as a normal tenant was in fact a predator who had turned his kitchen into a tomb. As soon as Vincent gave his half-confession in the interrogation room, Amélie knew he was hiding more. A man who could calmly describe dismembering a body like butchering a pig, he surely hadn't stopped at just one victim. A search team was sent to his temporary flat in Marseille, a small room by the harbour with a shabby wooden door, the stench of mildew mixed with cheap wine, sparse belongings, a few old clothes, empty wine bottles scattered, a half-open suitcase with some worn books. Nothing seemed to speak until an officer found the loose lining of the wardrobe. Inside was a hidden black external hard drive. The hard drive was sent immediately to the digital forensics unit. Within 12 hours of decryption, the meeting room sank into icy silence as file after file appeared. Dozens of photos and videos, mostly blurry, bathed in smeared yellow light. In them, Vincent appeared with different women's, met through a dating app. The setting was usually the apartment at 17 Rue des Fraines. One video in particular made everyone shudder. Vincent poured wine for a young woman and said softly, "Don't worry. This is homemade wine I brewed myself. It's made from my heart." Then he laughed. But it wasn't the laugh of a humorous man, it was the laugh of a beast toying with flesh. Amélie clenched her fists, a chill crawling down her spine. In the documents folder, a text file named La Liste was opened. Inside were 5 women's names, with dates and meeting places. Next to each name was a chilling note, "Silency, silenced." Police immediately contacted the families. The results left everyone speechless. 2 of the 5 had been reported missing, but at the time, no one linked them to Vincent. One disappearance dated back to 2020, right when he was working in the slaughterhouse. Élise was clearly not the first victim. She was only the first where he lost control, leaving traces too obvious to ignore. Amélie stood before the whiteboard in the investigation room. On it, she pinned the photos of each woman on the list, some still missing, some confirmed dead. Smiling faces, bright eyes, now turned into ghosts, screaming for justice. She read each line of the file, La Liste again, her voice hoarse. He saw them as targets, not love, not partners, just tally marks on a sick plan. The room was dead silent. A young officer muttered, "So, we're dealing with a serial killer." Amélie nodded slowly, and he's been playing this game for years. That night, sitting alone in her office, Amélie replayed the video with Vincent's hoarse laughter. Outside, the Marseille rain tapped against the windows. She heard him say, "This is wine made from my heart." Those words felt like a signal, a confession disguised as a joke. But what chilled Amélie most was the question: where were the women in those videos now? How many were still alive? Or had they all been silenced like Élise? She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply, letting the damp office air fill her lungs. In the darkness of memory, she heard her father's old voice. "Don't trust the surface. The truth always lies beneath the coldest concrete." That advice had now become her compass. Vincent wasn't just a manslaughter. He was a serial killer, calculated, cold, systematic. And Élise was merely the newest chapter in his blood-soaked diary. Interrogation room 3, the white light shone down on Vincent's dull eyes. He had stopped denying, stopped saying accident, but one question still hung heavy, like a boulder in Amelia's mind. "Elise's head, where is it?" Vincent looked up, the corner of his mouth curling slightly. His eyes were not those of a man cornered, but of a beast still hiding its prey. "Do you really want to know?" he whispered. "It's not in Liege. I took it with me. Buried it in Forenzet, north of Marseille. Beneath an oak tree, alone, no grave." The room fell into silence. Amélie slowly nodded, ordering the team to coordinate with local forces. 3 days later, in the Forenzet forest, beneath a lone old oak tree, they dug up a rotting plastic bag. Inside was the skull of Élise Garnier, her long hair still matted in a bundle. Amélie stared into the empty sockets. A chill ran down her spine. Élise had finally been found, but the truth had not yet been freed. Back in the interrogation room, Amélie placed the sealed bag on the table. "Why keep the head?" she asked, her voice dry. Vincent leaned back, his lips curling into a crooked smile. "Because it's the only part that shows me they once lived. A headless body is just meat, but the face, the eyes, the smile." He chuckled, a rasping laugh like metal scraping steel. "They tell the whole story." Amélie felt her stomach tighten, but kept her voice steady. "How many people did you kill?" Vincent tilted his head, his dark eyes glinting with challenge. You think Élise was the only one? The names on the list, just fragments. I wrote them for fun. In truth, I stopped counting. A young officer clenched his fists beside her, but Amélie signaled for silence. She knew this man was savoring every second, turning the interrogation room into his stage. The digital investigator brought in more evidence. On the hard drive were strangely edited images of women's faces superimposed onto old paintings, paired with wine glasses, candles, guitars, a grotesque collection. Amélie's eyes lit up as she stared at Vincent. You wanted to be discovered. You left the clues on purpose. Why? Vincent stayed silent. 1 beat, 2 beats. Then he let out a dry laugh. Now you understand. Burying a body under the floor, keeping a head in a suitcase, keeping a list. Those weren't mistakes. They're my signature, a painting, a private exhibition, only for those who dare to dig beneath the concrete. He leaned forward, eyes wide, voice hissing through his teeth. And you, Amélie, you are my audience. The room thickened, as if even the air had frozen. For the first time in years of solving cases, Amélie felt a chill shoot straight from her heart to her mind. She looked at the man before her, not a suspect, but a monster wearing human skin, turning murder into art. The biggest twist emerged. Vincent wasn't just hiding crimes. He wanted to be remembered, to turn each corpse into a work of art that left its mark. Élise was only one link, and it was his arrogance that brought the truth to light. Amélie took a deep breath, her eyes never leaving Vincent. In her mind, a whisper echoed. He wasn't trying to disappear. He was trying to become immortal in our memory. Outside the interrogation room, the rain of Marseille poured relentlessly, as if trying to wash away all crimes. But some bloodstains never fade. They had been painted into canvases, pinned directly into human memory. The trial of Vincent Leclerc became a sensation in Liege, and soon spread across Belgium. The criminal court opened to the public, with hundreds of journalists, citizens, and victims' families crowding outside. In the storm-thick air, everyone longed for the harshest sentence against the man who turned a kitchen into a tomb. Vincent entered the courtroom in grey prison clothes, his hands cuffed, his face gaunt but his eyes still holding a trace of defiance. He did not cry, did not beg, only smiled as the prosecutor read the charges: premeditated murder, dismemberment, desecration of a corpse, and suspicion of serial killing. Dozens of pieces of evidence were presented. The video of him laughing over a glass of wine, the bloodied suitcase, the hard drive with the silency list, Élise's skull under the oak tree. Each piece cut into public opinion like a knife, leaving the courtroom frozen silent, broken only by the clerk's pen scratching. Amélie sat in the gallery, her eyes unblinking. She felt no triumph. She only wanted to ensure that no loophole could ever set him free. Élise's family did not come. They chose to stay away from camera flashes and headlines feeding on grief. Only Sophie, her former roommate, sat quietly at the back of the room. In her hand was the gold necklace, now washed clean of blood. When the prosecutor spoke Élise's name, Sophie's shoulders trembled. Tears rolled down, but her eyes shone bright, the eyes of someone who had finally seen justice rise. After many days of deliberation, the court sentenced Vincent Leclerc to death. The verdict shook the nation. Belgium had abolished the death penalty in 1996, but for crimes of exceptional gravity considered crimes against humanity, the court approved the maximum sentence under international law. The decision fell like a blade, final, denying him any chance to turn his sick words into legacy. When the sentence was read, Vincent did not cry, did not rage. He only gave a faint smile, lips whispering, at last. "I am remembered," a single sentence that froze the entire courtroom. After the trial, Amélie stepped outside, drawing in a deep breath. The sky over Liege was grey, the rain falling lightly, but softer now after the storm. She stood for a long time on the courthouse steps, letting the cold drops soak into her coat. In her heart lingered a painful void. How many names on LA list would never be found? How many families would never have answers? But at least a girl once buried under concrete had at last been given back her voice. Amélie gently closed her eyes, hearing her father's voice in memory. Justice is never complete. But if it lights even part of the darkness, the world is spared one nightmare. That afternoon, Sophie went to the cemetery. She laid the necklace on Élise's new grave, engraved with the words, "Élise Garnier." She smiled even when the world crushed her heart. And now she is silenced no more. The autumn breeze stirred softly, carrying the chime of the necklace brushing against the stone, sounding like the final whisper of a lost friend. The story closes not with sweet redemption, but with a cold, just verdict. Vincent Leclerc, the man who saw murder as art was, finally cut off from the world, denied the chance to turn anyone else into silence. And the message still echoes, like a blade carved deep into the mind. A monster doesn't always growl. Sometimes it smiles, lifts a glass of red wine, and whispers sweet words. But no matter the mask it wears, justice will find it.